Welcome to Mornings with Mack, Rapapali, Jessica.
Hello, I'm very happy to be here.
All right, so you have got a book out, right? Is it your first book?
It's my first book that's been published outside of like Wattpad in the realm of fan fiction, so I guess in a sense.
All right. So now let's go deeper into detail about this book. You went through what? Some rejection? I mean, what kind of experiences did you go through?
So I think what was very influential in the writing of this book was the fact that when I was younger, I skipped a grade and I moved up to a different grade full of different people, and that was rather stressful. And then I also had some issues dealing with anxiety and depression, and all of these sort of culminated into quite a difficult time for me, which meant that I learned to use writing as a sort of coping mechanism, like an outlet for what I was feeling when I couldn't really explain it verbally or deal with it. I would just write about what I was feeling and be able to better recognize the emotions and deal with them.
Now, how old are you? 14, right?
Yes.
Yes, what was I doing at 14? Probably playing around with a brick somewhere. I don't know. At 14 years of age, I mean, one can realize right now that time is changing. Out of all of those experiences, which one would you say this was the experience that literally drove me into depression mode?
I'm not entirely sure about that. I think that it wasn't one thing as much as a collection of things. Like, it was difficult being in a new social environment. I've never been the greatest at making friends, and so that was rather difficult. And then I'm very bad at keeping secrets, and so that was difficult too, because I was trying to fit in, I was trying to keep secrets and be cool, because all cool kids don't talk to their parents. And that didn't really work out because I'm tremendously bad at that. And there were a lot of things that were just rather difficult for me to deal with. And in not being able to deal those things, I was sort of looking at myself, and I was always going like, why can't you do this? Why can't you just be a normal functioning human being? And that sort of culminated in me just really going through depression and anxiety.
So then what's the real reason why you wrote the book?
I think when I set out, for words here. When I wrote these poems, I didn't set out to write a book.
Yeah.
In fact, I think that 11-year-old me would have been terrified to know that people were reading these.
Yeah.
I think, I wrote these as a catharsis. I wrote them to deal with and to get out the emotions that I was feeling, and to be able to recognize them, see them for what they were, and then do something constructive with them. And so I think that the writing process was for my own personal peace of mind, but the process to publish this book was because I knew, and I know, that other people, especially people in my age group, young people, do go through this, and oftentimes they feel as if it's something that they have to go through alone. And I wanted to make sure that they didn't have to feel that way anymore, that people could maybe see my words and recognize something of themselves in them, and then know that this is normal, and it's something that's real, and it's something you don't have to go through alone.
Now, what was the hardest scene or the hardest poetry to write?
Ooh.
I can just imagine somewhere you got stuck, right? Like,
yeah,
these words are just not coming together, or it's not sounding right.
Yeah, I think technically speaking, in terms of actually writing the poetry, what was difficult, there's a poem in here called 11, and it talks about some sensitive issues. And when I was writing this, I wanted it to read nicely as a poem. Like, technically I wanted to make sure that the flow was right, and that it was something people didn't, well, not enjoy, but something that would be a good poem to read. But then I also wanted to make sure that I handled these issues correctly, and that I portrayed them well. And then in terms of hard emotionally, there's a poem in the book called Feels Like, and it was written in the midst of a panic attack. And the process of taking that poem from my notebook, sort of editing it and cutting out the parts that I literally can't read because my handwriting was really panicked in that part, putting that together into something that would still be a good poem instead of just a good reflection of what I was feeling, that was pretty difficult.
You mentioned panic attack, which just actually automatically clicked. What was happening then?
You see, the thing is, I wrote it a couple of years ago in December, and it was a really good day. I have no idea what triggered this, which can sometimes happen with panic attacks. You don't know what causes them. It just happens. And so I was just completely freaking out, and I didn't really know how to talk about it. And so I took my notebook and I was just scribbling this poem into it.
Now, there are many kids, out there your age, younger than you, even, as adults, we still look for advice from people like you. And, these kids are not willing to open up in terms of the experiences of life or what they go through. What would your advice be to them?
So I think I have two main pieces of advice. The first would be to find an outlet, whether that's like writing or art or talking to somebody, because the more that something's spoken, the more it can be dealt with. I think that there's this quote by this man called Mr. Rogers. He was a philanthropist, and he had a children's TV show actually that dealt with a lot of stuff about mental health, and then also things like divorce and segregation in the 60s in America. So it was like a brave move of him. And he has this quote that goes, anything that's human is mentionable, and anything that's mentionable can become manageable. And
Wow.
I just love that. And I think that ties into the second piece of advice that I would give, which would be just simply to find someone you trust who you can talk about this with, because mental health is something that's really oftentimes stigmatized. Like you think it's something wrong with you, or something that you've done wrong, or people around you think it's something they've done wrong. And I think it isn't. It's something that happens. Just like if you get sick, it isn't your fault. Like if you develop something wrong with your lungs, that's not your fault. You didn't do anything to cause that. It just happened. And it can be like that with mental health. And it's not something you have to be ashamed of or have to keep in secret and go through alone. So I would just say,
and
get
that
it out
comes
there.
from a 14-year-old, ladies and gentlemen. Like, all right, what does this go eat in the morning? I wonder. Listen, Jess, thank you so much for making time. Now, before I let you go, where can one find your book? What's the title of the book? And where is it available?
So this book is called A Few Slivers of Light, and honestly, I'm really proud of it. It's available on my website, www.jessrobus.com, and Robus is spelt Robus. Autocorrect hates my surname. And you can also get it in an ebook or print on demand format on Amazon just by searching A Few Slivers of Light. And then if you want to keep up with me and see what I'm up to, because sometimes I post like poems and songs and things, then I'm on Facebook as Jess Robus, and on Instagram at Jess_Celeste_musical_mayhem.
Thank you. Listen, Jess, go well and good luck with the book, and thank you very much. Okay.
Really, thank you for having me. It's been wonderful to be here.
Jacaranda FM.